2015 was when Mohammed Akhlaq was lynched, and 2025 is when Ali was put behind bars on completely fabricated charges. The message that's very strongly sent here is that no matter who you are, whether you're a working class Muslim or teaching or a Cambridge educated academic, so if you're Muslim, then you are unsafe. That's one. Number two is if you're Muslim, then your weight of citizenship in India is less than the weight of a caste Indian citizen.
It's a very dangerous development, especially from the perspective of the citizenry. So it's not only about academics; it's also about the citizenry, the citizens' life, especially the minorities, religious minorities, particularly the Muslims.
It is really bizarre and absurd to think of the way the state has cracked down on him. For a person who is constantly such a pacifist, he's thinking about peace, thinking about fraternity. It's a tragedy that we have to invoke the court in something like this. It's a crime that he's in jail in the first place. That's the real crime.
The person with such a huge social economic capital and who belongs to the elite, even that person is not able to come out of this mess. That person has to go to the Supreme Court to come out of this mess. Then it's a huge issue.
The implications of this, completely absurd criminal action against Ali. You feel constrained to carry your identity. And on the other hand, the university is a place which is a place of safety and of trust. That is shattered by actions like this. Salam, Namaste, Zindabad, friends. I welcome you back. I'm Mander. I welcome you back to this new episode of Ye Daagh Ujala. This is a series of long-form discussions that we have been, the Ali Mahmudabad does with Scroll. This is a special episode. It's a painful episode. It's an episode of solidarity and admiration for a colleague, a friend, a comrade who has been put into prison at the time that we speak. Professor Ali Khan Mahmudabad continues to be under police custody. We are anxiously waiting for the intervention of the Supreme Court for him to get bail. And this discussion is really to reflect on what is it that Ali said, what crimes is he being charged about, and what does he really stand for. I have two very fine friends who are with me on this discussion. Both of them have taught at universities. One of them is Rajendran Narayanan. He's associate professor in the Azim Premji University. He teaches a course on data, democracy, and development. And secondly, we have Nizamuddin Ahmed Siddqui. Till very recently, he was teaching law at the Jindal Global Law School. And since more recently, he started a project looking more intensively at the status of India's Muslims in a project that he calls Mishkat. So I welcome both of you, friends. In fact, Nizamuddin, Ali, and I were together very recently, just a few weeks ago, uh, in my office for a discussion on Waqf, and I could not dream that we'd have to gather so quickly again in solidarity with Ali. So welcome all of you. I just thought, before before anything else, I wanted to introduce Ali to our listeners uh, through a post that his students put out. And having, one of the many hats I wear is of a teacher, and there's nothing more beautiful than an endorsement by one's students. And this one is luminous. So it says, we, the students of his certain course, stand firmly united and in solidarity with Professor Dr. Ali Khan Mahmudabad. Uh, Throughout the course, Professor Khan lectured us on love, consistently emphasizing secular values such as reason, compassion, justice, and freedom of thought as the foundation of meaningful dialogue. His wrongful arrest is stark violation not just of academic freedom, but of the very principles he taught us and stands for. He emphasized the power of the written word and encouraged us to speak, to share truths, and to hold space for each other. It was under his guidance and in the space created by his lectures that many of us felt emboldened to speak, to share, to write, to enjoy, and appreciate the safety and sanctity of the space. The principles he believes in, compassion, justice, and freedom, were not something he just taught or preached. He lives them, and in doing so, helps us live them more truly. Uh, Rajendran, you also know Ali. What else would you like to tell us about him?
First of all, thank you, Harsh, and thank you, Karwa and Bhagat, for doing this. This is a very important initiative, and I think the students' endorsement speaks volumes. I had also read the letter yesterday, and I have a lot of gratitude for the students who to stand in solidarity with Ali, but it's not empty solidarity. It's done with a lot of compassion, empathy, and respect and dignity, which there's no drama in the way they stand for solidarity, which I find very endearing. I have much gratitude.
Absolutely.
So Ali is a friend. I've known him for many years, and especially uh, in October we met again after a few years when we were going to attend incidentally an ex-student's wedding, and we traveled together from Delhi for that. And once again, the conversations were free flowing, and there was every minute was just about thinking about what can we do better? How do we think about peace? How do we think about fraternity? How do we improve the lives of people? And the entire conversation was just on that. It was not as if we had anything we lost in the years that we didn't talk. So I think the very fact that he was constantly thinking about it and working towards it is a very lasting testimony of the kind of person he is. And that's why it is really bizarre and absurd to think of the way the state has cracked down on him. For a person who is constantly such a pacifist, he's thinking about peace, thinking about fraternity. And for a person who's constantly thinking about these questions, to be charged under absolutely bizarre kind of charges that have been framed against him is really shook me. And I think I'm also thankful to a lot of people who are standing in solidarity with him now. And that it gives me a lot of hope also in these peak times. So I think, yeah, I think Ali is a fantastic person. And I'm hopeful that the court, it's a tragedy that we have to invoke the court in something like this. It's a crime that he's in jail in the first place. That's the real crime.
That is the only crime. Yes, Nizam. you and he and I were together, as I said, in my office room and just a few weeks ago. Is there something that you wanted to add just about Ali the person?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Harsh, and for inviting me to this important conversation. And I echo many of the things that Professor Rajendran has mentioned. And yes, roughly 3 weeks or something ago, we were discussing the issue of Waqf in your office in New Delhi. And I fondly remember we had a very good conversation, of course, on camera and of course, before and after the camera.
Which is
was
always better, which is always
Yes,
better
better.
before and after. Yeah.
So we had very good conversations, and I personally found him very cordial and very engaging with respect to the topics, and that was my first meeting with him, and I was very happy meeting him. And the kind of discussions that we had, the video is anyways there on the YouTube. The kind of discussions that we had during our conversation is something similar that he posted on Twitter as well. There is nothing different that he mentioned there. The issue of Muslim identity, attack on the identity, erasure of the identity through lynching, mob, demolition, and all those things. So that's what, this is nothing new. This is not him only saying this, or this is not the first time that people are saying this, or this is not the first time that that's it's being discussed. Even courts have discussed this, and courts have come out on this heavily upon the government and upon the officials and the bureaucracy. So I don't think that could have triggered something as serious as this one. And I agree with Rajendran, like Professor Rajendran, that this is actually a crime to put him behind bars for mentioning these things. So, but I found him very, very cordial and very, very, sweet person.
And thoughtful, yes, and very charming, of course.
Yes.
I wanted to sort of list some of the sections that he's been charged in, the very grave sections of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Just for illustratively, he's charged under section 152, which punishes acts endangering sovereignty, unity, and the integrity of India. This is sort of the new version of the sedition kind of act section. It mirrors the language of the sedition provision that's been in the old act. Section 79, which penalizes, this is somewhat even more mystifying. Acts, words, or gestures intended to insult the modesty of a woman. Section 196, 1B deals with disturbing communal harmony and public tranquility. Section 197, 1C deals with imputation and assertions prejudicial again to national integration. Section 299 refers to deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings of any class by insulting its religion and religious beliefs. And then, of course, Section 350, which penalizes statements conducing to public mischief, whatever that means. And these carry, jail terms for up to 7 years and such like. Now, these are the kinds of charges that our friend has been charged with for 2 Facebook posts. And I thought, let me take the thrust of these are long posts, and I would recommend that everybody should read them in their fullness. Apart from everything else, he's written them very poetically in terms of and evocatively. But first, let's just take the charge of sedition, which is one very grave charge. And here, there was something else that his students wrote very specifically. They said, Professor Khan always expected and taught us to question everything and form our own opinions. He never expressed any disrespect for our nation and its constitution, nor did he ever teach us such disrespect. And it's sad that you even have to say this, because he's been charged with sedition and because of his Muslim identity. But his May 8th um, uh, Facebook post actually is strikingly a somewhat it sounds like an endorsement of the principles of the military action. Uh, so far from being seditious, he was saying strategically, India has actually begun a new phase in terms of collapsing distinction between military and terrorist action, which is non-state actors in Pakistan. In effect, the response to any terrorist activity will invite a conventional response, and so this puts the onus on the Pakistani military to make sure that it cannot hide any longer behind terrorists and non-state actors. He goes on to say that the Pakistani military has for too long used militarized non-state actors to destabilize the region. And Operation Sindhu resets all these received notions of the relationship and so on. And so there's nothing at all. For instance, firstly, that questions or interrogates the military action that the state has done. Let me, so broadly the charges, one is sedition, the second is something against women, and the third is broadly against communal harmony and religious freedom. So let me take each of those. Any sort of quick response? Is there anything seditious that you heard in this post?
Well, I don't think it's I don't know how should I frame it, but it's funny to read sedition into this language because there is no relationship. The way criminal law works, and by the way, you have charged the person under a section which is sedition. Of course, you're not using the term now sedition these days, but you are charging him under sedition.
Same language.
But the most interesting part is whether sedition should continue to exist as a crime or not is anyways pending before the Supreme Court of India in the S.G. Bombardkar case. And even though you have new section which does not use that term but kind of frames it in a similar language, so we do not know if this section can be applied and in what way it can be applied because the case is still pending. So not only that the crime of sedition is not attracted through the language because it's a serious thing. We actually do not know if under sedition or under any of these things can actually frame persons in a very serious tone. So I think it's very funny in that sense, and it's very unfortunate also.
It's almost like a satire
Yes.
to say that this is sedition. In fact, I was reading further, Rajendran, he while endorsing, he begins opening up why he's opposed to war and his pacifism, and we'll come to his words around that. But even here, he said he's again endorsing the military action. He's saying care has been taken by the Indian Armed Forces to not target military or civilian installations or infrastructure so that there is no unnecessary escalation. The message is clear. If you don't deal with your terrorism problem, then we will. The loss of civilian life is tragic on both sides and is the main reason why war should be avoided. This is, this is where he goes. So, Rajan, anything just about this portion of his statements?
This again, I'll allude to something that I completely agree with Nizam Sahab when he talks about the fact that on sedition, the way he spoke. But I'll again quote this last line from the students' statement where they say that Professor Khan often quotes Dr. Cornel West, and I quote here, "Justice is what love looks like in public, just like tenderness is what love feels like in private." And I think this quote, which the students say that it's very dear to Ali, And I think this really embodies in the way he's laid out this entire thing, entire passage from his post that we just read. He's talking about what is he saying? Saying something very simple, and he's saying something deeply human. He's saying that loss of lives is tragic, no matter whose life is lost. Now, how can this be seditious?
Mhm.
He is saying that military action against terror is fine. That's totally fine. Yes, we all condemn terrorism. I don't think there's anyone in this forum or this panel or Ali or anyone who's supporting terrorism. We all condemn terrorism. And that's what he's saying. He's saying the military action against terror is fine, but we need to de-escalate because war, what he's trying to say here is that if we go ahead with war, then inevitably war results in tragedy of innocent lives lost. War will lead to loss of economic growth on both sides. So there is nothing absolutely. I think one has to be really a genius of sorts to bring out some kind of seditious element. And I think it's I think as you said, it's almost like a novel by someone like Samuel Beckett or Milan Kundera to invoke this kind of a bizarre situation in a bizarre kind of claims this kind of a post.
Somewhat equally bizarre is and the chairperson or the chairwoman of the Women's Commission actually has complained that his post is against women. And let me just read this, fully, that one paragraph which is relevant. He said, "I'm very happy to see that so many right-wing commentators applauded Colonel Sofia Qureshi. But perhaps they could also equally loudly demand that the victims of mob lynchings, arbitrary bulldozing, and others who are victims of the BJP's hate mongering be protected as Indian citizens. The optics of two women soldiers presenting their findings is important, but optics must translate to reality on the ground, otherwise it's hypocrisy." And towards the end, he says, "For me, the press conference was just a fleeting glimpse, an illusion and an allusion, perhaps, to an India that defied the logic on which Pakistan was built. As I said, the grassroots reality that common Muslims face is different from what the government tried to show. But at the same time, the press conference shows that an India united in its diversity is not completely dead as an idea." Now, where was there an insult to women? In this very beautiful, and especially when he says, in the end, whatever the symbolic optics of bringing Colonel Sofia Qureshi to be the face of India at this time, it does remind us that the idea of India united in its diversity is not completely dead as an idea. Where is the insult to women? Either of you, if you can just sort of help us find that.
So, if I may first, I think I'm reminded of this short story by Mullah Nasruddin, where he says that he was searching for a key in a place, and it was in the daytime he was searching for a key, and someone walked in and says, "Did you lose your key here?" And Mullah Nasruddin says, "No." Then the person says, "Then why are you searching for your key here?" He says, "Because there's light here." It's almost like that.
It's almost like that.
It's almost like that because there's nothing. So it's like searching for an absent needle in a haystack in a dark room, and then saying that, okay, there must be a needle here. So we need to find that needle in this dark room, no matter whether the needle is there or not. I think that really encapsulates what the Haryana Commission of Women is trying to do with Ali in terms of framing his post as an anti-woman post.
So thanks for allowing us to access to at least laugh. Nizam, is anything that I'm not sure you have anything to add to this?
Harsh, of course, I agree with Professor Rajendran, but I also see it very symbolically. You have the State Commission for Women chairman, who also took cognizance of a matter that happened in Jindal University in 2023. And that was with respect to a professor teaching on sexuality, gender, and the social construction of identity. And then it was, one of the dating apps that was run in the classroom, and that became controversial. So the same, chairman of the Commission for Women, she took cognizance of it. And here also, she is taking cognizance of it, and she's the one of the persons who has filed an FIR in this case. So there are two FIRs actually against Ali. So this is one. The other symbol. So this is where it becomes interesting. So in the earlier case, you had Jindal University. Now in this case, you have Ashoka University.
Okay.
So that's there. The geography is also symbolic. The complaint was made to Jakhedi police station. I have been, I taught at Jindal. So Jindal is very near Jakhedi. The place closest to Jindal is Jakhedi. And Ashoka is very near Jindal. So that is also symbolic. The second, FIR that is filed against Professor Mahmudabad is by a local leader from Jakhedi.
Right.
And that makes it again very symbolic. So it's not only about the Muslim identity or the issue of women, it is also the issue of, university, the elite university spaces that are being, contested in a very different sense. So I think, and to do that, the issue of, gender, or probably, women's identity is being used to kind of make them contested spaces for learning, teaching, and thinking. So I think that this is very, very symbolic, and it has huge repercussions.
Yeah, and if I may just add, I think I completely agree with Nizam Saab's point, which is the fact that invoking this anti-woman is another way of trying to frame Ali in a very new light, in a very different light. It's not just a question of sedition or being so-called anti-national, etc., but it's also trying to frame him a completely new spin.
It's called gender washing by some.
Correct.
Absolute. And then the third, crime, which, I mean, it's hard to decide which is more ridiculous than the last, but that he's creating hatred between religious communities. I mean, his post on why he opposes war, I feel I would make it compulsory reading, part of every reader in every sort of school book. I say, in fact, very recently I put out a video where I said very similar things. Exactly, about what the consequences of war on innocent civilian lives on both sides of the border and so on. But Ali said it with far greater eloquence, and I'll take a little while reading out portions of this for you. He says, when you clamor for war or you call for a country to be wiped out, what exactly are you asking for? For the genocide of an entire people? I know Israel is getting away with doing this, and some Indians admire this, but do we really want to advocate the wholesale murder of children as potential future enemies? Just because you're far from the border, because you've internalized so much hate that you no longer think of human beings when you think of an entire country, people, religious community, ethnic group, or social group, doesn't mean that you are safe. This goes for all places where this conflict goes. You cannot equate an entire people with their government. In any case, war eventually hits everyone. It's just a matter of time. So think about what it means when you say, wipe them out, finish them, destroy them. You're saying, kill all the children, the elderly, the minorities, those who are opposed to war on either side, and many other innocent people who want to do exactly what you want to do. Be a father, a mother, a daughter, a son, a grandparent, and a friend. You can only ask for such wholesale destruction if you have completely dehumanized them. And this is what the media, religious community leaders, politicians, others are seeking to do, to dehumanize the other so that you don't even see them as human beings. He also talks about, those from the border seem far from the border, think that war is some kind of video game. This dehumanization is symptomatic of a deeply seated insecurity within us, because we somehow need to summon someone else's humanity, to deny someone else's humanity to affirm our own. But the reality is that the moment we dehumanize someone else, even though they might represent the opposite of what we stand for, then we have given in to our basest instincts. We have sown the seeds of our own destruction. People will tell you, he says, those who call for peace are cowards. No, I tell you, those who sit at home and call for war are cowards, because it is not their sons and daughters who have to go to battle, and so on. Now, with this really evocative, call for peace, uh, how can a government describe this as an act of hatred? Nizam, would you like to deepen?
Well, again, a very, very kind of preposterous claim. It's. I cannot even imagine. Uh, to defend it, or to say it is not it itself silly. To say that it is not that, because even a common human mind would not read it like that.
Yeah.
So what about the officials? I'll just read an important portion from, Harsh, for both of you and for your audience, from the case of Imran Pratapgarhi,
Okay.
where his post was, it was taken cognizance of, and some sections which are similar to, Professor Mahmudabad's, case, section 1996 and 197 especially. What did the court say? And this is, I think, very, very important here in this context. So this is Imran Pratapgarhi's case, 2025, and this is para number 42 and 4, paragraph, sub paragraph number 6, actually. On page number 51.
This is a lawyer speaking. Okay. Okay.
So what does the court say? The court says, when an offense punishable under section 196 of BNS is alleged, the effect of the spoken or written words will have to be considered based on standards of reasonable, strong-minded, firm, and courageous individuals, and not based on the standards of people with weak and oscillating minds. The effect of the spoken or written words cannot be judged on the basis of the standards of people who always have a sense of insecurity, or of those who always perceive criticism as a threat to their power or position. So this is actually a response to what has happened in this case.
That's beautifully evoked. I'm exactly when you talked about who are cowards and who are brave human beings. I think this distinction is also implied here, that the brave will speak out and the weak will feel insecure and lead all kinds of conspiracies and meanings.
Yeah, and more than that, Harsh, it actually tells you from whose perspective you have to read the section. You have to read the section from the perspective of mature, understanding individuals, not from the perspective of individuals who run by the whims and fancies.
And also that this kind of, I mean, from Trump to Modi to all of the right-wing leaders are creating hatred based on fear. I mean, they're fear mongering, which is leading to hate mongering. So America is being persuaded that these very impoverished immigrants who are coming in from Mexico is the source of all your problems. And here again, we are being persuaded in India that the Muslim community, which is economically, socially, very disadvantaged, is somehow the cause of all your problems. So I think the fear mongering leads you to be fearful and insecure, and then leads you to hate. is what comes out. Rajendran, how would you respond to the charge of hate mongering in this?
Yeah, I think it's very well established that these charges are preposterous and absurd. But I think the the way I see it is that there are three broad strands in Ali's case, right? So the first is the continued humiliation of inflicted on Muslims. The fact that uh, no matter who you are, if we look at the trajectory of the way things have happened since 2014, 2015 was when Muhammad Akhlaq was lynched, and 2025 is when Ali was put behind bars and completely fabricated charges. Now, in the middle, of course, we'll get into what has happened in the last 10 years. But one thing is the message that's very strongly sent here is that no matter who you are, yeah, as long if you're a Muslim, then no matter who you are, whether you're a working class Muslim or teaching or a Cambridge educated uh, academic in academic in India. So if you're Muslim, then you are unsafe. That's one. Number two is if you're Muslim, then your weight of citizenship in India is less than the weight of a caste Indian citizen. And what that means, it's almost as if you're a Muslim, if you're an Indian Muslim, you are paying a visa fee to be in India. And that visa fee that you're paying or the user fee that you're paying is one of silence. So whether you're preaching peace, whether you don't talk about it, as long as you don't talk about anything, as long as you just remain servile, being a yes man to everything that the government is saying, you're fine. The moment you say anything, if you're talking peace, you're arrested. So that's a strong message that is being sent. And the second thing, just building on what Ali's post is saying, that if you're talking about this, you should also be vocal about mob lynchings and the bulldozers. Is the government's usage of institutional mechanisms to target Muslims, whether it's bulldozers or mob lynching. And third is, of course, the case of academic freedom. And we can discuss each of these three things in detail. And I think that's just one thing I want to add here is when you when you talked about whether it's Trump or Modi or someone else, is this idea of manufacturing hate for the other, because that's the principle of majoritarianism.
True fear mongering. I mean,
To fear mongering, exactly. And that's the principle. So unless you have a continuous injection of prejudice and resentment on people, then how are you going to that? Because that corrodes compassion, right? If I'm constantly injecting prejudice and resentment, what I'm doing is I'm born with compassion, and this is an antidote to compassion. So I'm vaccinating you against compassion. And when I'm vaccinating you against compassion, the only thing that's left is hatred, which is through fear and hatred. So, and majoritarianism can function only when there is the tone and the template is set by the party in power, by the government in power. So if the government in power is silent towards splintered acts of violence, so we see splintered acts of violence against Muslims all over the country, and we don't see any action against them.
Right.
And because there is sanction from the top. So that's the essence of how majoritarianism functions.
You know, in his post, I also found this idea of religious hatred. He quotes both from the Gita and from the Prophet. He quotes from the Gita. He says, Krishnaji is saying, "What makes war just? Even if you accept that war is inevitable because violence is a part of the human condition, it is precisely this, the violence within all of us, that we have to try to overcome. Wars fought for pride, ego, and all the false ideologies that flow from them can never be just." And it's a very profound reflection for our times. And from the Prophet, he says, he quotes the Prophet to saying, "Do not desire to meet your enemy in battle, but if you do, then be patient." Um, so let's sort of remember, keep in our minds the ethical, political sort of quality and also the courage behind it. in what Ali has said to the world, for which he is now in police custody. What are its larger implications, if you could spend a little time talking about it? So firstly, uh, he's a teacher, and he's an intellectual. So what is the message to a teacher, an intellectual, to the learning space of a university, more so if you are of Muslim identity? Anything that, the university should be a place of Nizamuddin also talked about the other instance in which this teacher was charged with crimes. When we were growing up, the university was a very safe space for diverse views to be discussed, and you respected. You may not agree with some, you agree with some, but this was a place. What is the university going to become if people, somebody who has made a plea for peace can be put in prison?
Harsh, I'm reminded of a very, interesting incident. It's an anecdote. When I started my, PhD in Jindal University, I did my PhD from there. So when I joined there in 2017, so I was doing the coursework, and I was fond of sherwani, so I used to wear sherwani on campus. But then it used to be very hot, so many a times I used to remove sherwani, and then under the sherwani it is kurta and pajama. That's how you dress. So I had made friends with a couple of students from other courses because it was a joint class. So, and which means I was going to many of the classes in kurta and pajama. And one of the students with whom I had good rapport, he said back then in 2017 and 18, he said, Nizam bhai, you are a very daring person. And I asked him, in what sense I'm a daring person? Why do you say that? And he said, you have a beard and you're wearing a kurta pajama. Okay. So I said, well, I'm carrying my identity. Well, I don't think there is anything, problematic about this. So I think university space, of course, all of us know that it has shrunk. But the kind of discussion that we are having now today, or the kind of discussion that is now required in the classroom, is a critical discussion, because you do not know the sources of knowledge. You do not know, what knowledge is all about. You do not know how to, kind of put it on paper. In the age of chat GPT, you do not know how to frame things. Who is copying what, from what source, for to say what. You do not know any of these things. So critical learning is fundamental now. And for critical learning to happen, you will have to allow people to have conversations, both in class conversations and outside the classroom conversation. And all of those conversations will have to be free conversations.
Right.
And universities must now create spaces for those conversations, because now what I see now in many of the universities, which was unlike that used to be previously, they have created spaces for sitting. There are structured spaces for sitting, for discussion, for carrying out activities. So there is no free conversation happening. There is no free engagement happening. So I think it becomes very, very difficult. It has already become very difficult for university space to work. And then if something from the classroom is going out in the public, classroom is a space where the teacher is the most free to discuss the ideas in the most critical fashion. If it goes out in the public, it's very similar to what is happening in the court. If the courtroom conversation is going out in the public and the public is criticizing it to any level, then it becomes difficult to hold courtroom conversations. How would you openly discuss it? Similarly, how would you openly discuss things in the classroom? And then if you tie it with a particular identity, whether it's a Muslim or a minority or a lower caste, then it becomes absolutely very difficult, because then uh, first of all, I have to think critically and engage critically, but then on account of my identity, I'm not able to do that. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, on account of my own identity, I'm not able to kind of discuss things that I myself feel. What the community feels or what I feel, I'm not able to bring that to the classroom. So in a sense, I become a very armchair academic. I cannot take realities of the day into the classroom, or to take classroom into the realities. There are many people. I used to see there were a couple of people in the university a couple of years back who used to take students out there in the open fields to teach, to kind of engage on certain topics. Why do you do that? You do that so that you can take the classroom outside into the society. That's a symbolic gesture. Okay. You have glass windows. Why do you do that? Because you want to kind of reduce the barrier between the environment and the classroom. Okay. So that is the idea. That's the philosophy. But if this kind of stifling of speech is happening, then it becomes very, very problematic. I'll just read one more thing, Harsh, and then we can take that forward. This is from Justice Kardju. Justice Kardju wrote an opinion piece in First Post, and in which he talked about free speech. So he quoted the Brandenburg versus Ohio, the US case of 1969. And the quote is: the constitutional guarantee of free speech does not permit a state to forbid or proscribe advocacy of the use of force or of law violation, except where such advocacy is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. So, of course, you can discuss these issues. You can discuss these issues in the classroom. You can discuss these issues on the social media platforms, until and unless it's very grave, which is of course not the case, that we have already discussed. And many of the people are already saying that. So I think it kills academic creativity, and it's very dangerous.
Nizam, thank you. I think what you said was very beautiful, very evocative, but also heartbreaking. That today it requires courage. Your student pointed out you're so brave that you expressing your identity in a university. I mean, it's extraordinary that we've come to this pass. But your student wasn't wrong, because we in Ali Mahmudabad, we are looking very closely, and will shortly be bring out a hate crime tracker, and we found that there are three major reasons as pretexts for people being hate lynched. The first is claims of harm to the cow. The second is the absurd claim of love jihad. But the third is just ostensible Muslim identity. And that's your only crime. When that railway constable walked through the train, he picked out three people who looked Muslim, and then to express you're in a hospital and offering namaz because your loved one is very sick. That is picked up as an act of creating hatred. So for this to have penetrated into the university, for somebody of the kind of moral caliber and intellectual caliber that Ali clearly carried with him, for him to be seen as somebody who who the state regards as potentially criminal, the message to, and that space, as you're saying, the free space of the space for free learning and discussion is what I, from my college days now, very long way back, I remember most the discussions. I mean, it was a wonderful place where we talked about everything, and with our teachers, between ourselves. There wasn't the furthest idea that there could be any danger in our conversations. But Rajendran, I mean, in addition to the freedom of speech and discussion in a university and the messages for that, there's also the question of trust. It also has to be an environment of trust where the teacher and the student may disagree, but they still retain trust in each other. Is that also breaking down with this in the entry of criminal law into a teacher's discourse?
Absolutely, Harsh. I think I was thinking while you were speaking about when you talked about the moral caliber of Ali, and I was thinking that Ali's case is not a freedom of speech issue; it's a freedom of peace issue.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a
It's beautifully, I would say freedom of conscience.
freedom
Because
of conscience, right?
absolutely.
It's a freedom of conscience, freedom of peace, and the reason I say that three things come to mind immediately. One is there's an old there was this mathematician scientist called Jacob Bronowski. If I remember right, that's the quote. And Jacob Bronowski beautifully talks about education and critical thinking, where he says students in the classroom should have a certain amount of barefoot irreverence that they bring to the classroom.
What a
When
lovely term, yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful phrase because when you bring in that barefoot irreverence, it says what is the nature of the classroom space, where we are saying that we are going to be completely clear. None of us is better than the other. And the relationship in the classroom is, I think, the a word that is emerging, which I kind of agree with, is the word of an educator, where everyone in the classroom can be an educator to the other person. So here, it should be treated as a sanctuary, wherein certain guards are off. And when your guards are off, you're able to speak freely, mingle freely. Think about in a living room or in your bedroom when you're talking with brother, sister, parents. We should be in a position to voice our opinion freely. And classroom is just a sanctuary, which is an extension of that kind of a space. Now, and that's where and trust plays a hugely important role. So if we are not able to speak our minds freely in the classroom, we are saying, and the whole idea is what is a contract in a classroom? It's not a monetary contract. It's not a contract that it's not what it's not a banking model that I'm going to lecture you on this. No, it's a space where you question me free. I may not know the truth. I may not know the answer. And one of the things that we should all try to embody in the classroom is that no one is better than the other. I might just have a few more years of experience than you. I might just have a few more years of having access to certain knowledge systems and different spaces than you. That's all. In terms of your originality and critical thinking, there's no reason for anyone to believe that I'm better than you. So this kind of and if we are going to criminalize, bring in a kind of criminal system within a classroom, which is what Nizam Saab talked about in the earlier case. And there was another instance when another ex-colleague and friend of mine, Aparna, who's what she was doing in the class was taken out of context and just bandied about with social media in a very wrong way. So these are examples where there is a breach of trust. There's a breach of faith. Now then, if we are doing that, if you're going to dismantle peace in a classroom and trust in a classroom, then we'll be parrots. We'll just read out from a textbook and say, this is what the textbook says, take it. So where is the scientific temper? Where is questioning? We're compromising in all those things. And actually, we are compromising. It's not just compromising on ethics and freedoms and moral implications, but we are compromising on even the economic prospect of a country. We are compromising on creativity. We are compromising on innovation. If there is no innovation unless there is questioning, if there is no questioning, how are we going to challenge what the status quo is? And that's not just history or social science. It's about mathematics. It's about, and that's how every kind of science progresses. In fact, there was a recent interview of Gauhar Raza, where Gauhar Raza very beautifully and eloquently talks about what is the difference between science and faith. He says in science, what we believe is true is what was the most recent advancement in it, which is yesterday. And in faith, what we believe is true is what happened thousands of years ago. So we need to, and what happened yesterday is the most up-to-date fact that's in front of you, which you need to play with, question, critique, dismantle, and recreate. So I think a class should be like children playing with Lego blocks, where you keep cutting each other, but in a civil and non-violent. That's important. Keeping the sanctity of respect and dignity in the classroom intact. So I think that's where I was just one more thing, and when you reflected, I was reflecting a little bit while both of you were speaking that about 24 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was a master's student in IIT Bombay, we had staged this play, and the play was called Sarhad, where I remember distinctly that the entire stage was divided into two parts. One part was India and one part was Pakistan. And the same dialogues were played out in both the parts of the stage, and different actions were happening. Now, I can't imagine a play like that happening today. I participated as an actor in that play 25 years ago. And I can't imagine such a play being hosted in any university today, public or private.
No, that's so, the implications of this, completely absurd criminal action against Ali for the university, and as you both of you spoke very beautifully, where you feel constrained to carry your identity. And on the other hand, the university is a place which is a place of safety and of trust. That is shattered by actions like this.
Sorry, just if I may just quickly add one more thing. Self-censorship is another thing.
Is it? Yeah. Okay.
No. Educators might enter a space saying, oh, what if something happens if I say this? So everyone is constantly on edge, on eggshells, thinking that, oh, I don't want to say anything because it might lead to something drastic.
Yes.
And that's terrible for education. That's terrible for children, society, growth, everything.
So just coming to the last part of our discussion, I really think we could have gone on for a very long time. But see, Ali was, of course, Ali is a much loved teacher, but he's also part of the larger society. And he, from what I learned, he's close to the Samajwadi Party. He participated in it. Now he's separated himself from politics. He comes from a sort of former Nawabi family of Mahmudabad, and are there implications? And he's of Muslim identity, of course. And this comes to me very clearly because everything that he has written and spoken, especially about peace, is something, for instance, that I try to do all the time. And yet, because of his Muslim identity, he is unsafe in taking public positions which contravene the ideological sort of grounding of the present regime. Regardless of the fact that it is much closer to the constitutional values than what the regime in power is. But I'm just saying, what is the message to the larger society when an elite, articulate, highly personable young Muslim man is arrested so unjustly? Is there a larger message even beyond the university? Nizam, what did you say?
Yeah, I think, of course, Harsh, it's a huge, you have a very, very big message coming here. The FIR is, registered on a complaint, has made very quickly, and to quash the FIR and to quash proceedings, if to take out, you have to go to the Supreme Court. It is such a huge cost. And see who is appearing for Professor Mahmudabad. Simple. A senior advocate, a very big name. How many people can afford a senior advocate? So it has a huge cost. So whether he has done something or not, whether it is good or bad, whether whether something comes out of it or not, that's something else. But the kind of procedural impediments that you have, with absolutely no accountability of the officers, of the bureaucrats, of the public officials, it's a big problem. So for a person like me, or you know or a person, majority of the population that is there, in the on the streets, doing one thing or the other, selling fruits, or running shops, or doing small things, it's a big message that a person who belongs to the elite, who has such a strong background, uh, most of his education is outside India, he is an elite in the true sense, and he's teaching in an elite space, and he is working in a very strong environment, and he has a very strong background. If someone like that, without doing anything, can be framed and in this kind of a fashion, and to get the solution, the person has to go to the Supreme Court. And what happens if the Supreme Court doesn't take cognizance of this immediately? Because there are thousands of cases already pending. Okay, so what would happen? The person will remain in the custody. So I think it's a big issue, and again, it's a very dangerous development, especially from the perspective of the citizenry. So it's not only about academics; it's also about the citizenry, the citizens' life, especially the minorities, religious minorities, particularly the Muslims. It sends a very strong message.
No, I think what you said, and also what Rajendran said earlier, that you have Akhlaq and Pehlu Khan, lynched, and legal justice is impossible. And you have at the other end of the spectrum, you have somebody who's elite and uh, has social capital and monetary capital to be able to get this kind of defense. What happens to everybody else who comes in the crosshairs of the state, uh, especially a state which has an ideological position which is in contradiction to India's constitutional values?
More than that, there is one more point, and that is, I think, more important. The message here is the person with such a huge social economic capital and who belongs to the elite, even that person is not able to come
Yes.
out of this mess. That person has to go to the Supreme Court to come out of this mess. Then it's a huge issue.
Yeah. Rajni, the message for the larger society that this government is trying to convey uh, uh, through this, what other implications do you see?
Yeah, I think again, I think Nizam sir spoke perfectly. I think he touched upon many points that we've been discussing and that I would like to say. I think it's two, three things that if I can state some facts just for the record, which is in 2023, this is based on analysis done by a Washington DC based group called India Hate Lab. And they say that in 2023, India recorded 668 documented hate speech events targeting Muslims. And 75% of them happened in BJP governed states. Okay. And a staggering 39% of them included, and I quote here, included a direct call of violence against Muslims. And also 78% of all the hate speech events targeting spaces of worship were also recorded in BJP governed states. So, and there's also this thing that before this peaked between August to November in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Telangana, which were going for assembly elections. And there is also another essay I had written for Scroll, wherein I cited two academic papers by different economist groups who said that they've cited evidence to suggest that before elections, there is a there is a whenever there is a communal violence before elections, BJP can. So that's the architecture of all of these things.
And I just would say I have access to the 2024 report of the
Okay, okay.
and it shows a huge swelling even between 23 and 24. And the Prime Minister is actually supposed to be the leading hate speech sort of delivery person in this report. So yes, I mean, and they are far from being punished, they are rewarded.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that implication. Go on, please.
So yeah, that's the main thing. So the thing is, and we are talking about Ali who was arrested in Haryana. Now we also remember the violence that happened in Noor in Haryana. And after that violence, 750 houses were bulldozed. All of them were Muslim houses. Now, there is, first of all, the usage of bulldozers. There's no legal sanction, there's nothing. It's completely illegal to do that. But none of those 750 households, since houses were bulldozed, got any kind of redemption as far as I know. In fact, one of the shopkeepers, there was a very powerful fact-finding report that was released by the Center for the Study of Society and Secularism, where they say that they talk to a shopkeeper saying, why do you think your house was demolished? And the shopkeeper says, because I'm Muslim. And exactly the same response is something I got when I was doing a fact finding of a different case in Karnataka when two youths were killed in Gadag district in Karnataka by Bajrang Dal mobs and so on. And there was one 17-year-old government college student who was beaten up by a mob of about 100 people. And I remember this distinctly when I asked the boy as to why you were beaten up. And the boy, very with a deadpan expression on his face, said, probably because I'm Muslim. Now, the thing is, where is the justice for that boy or all those Muslim residents whose houses have been demolished? Another migrant worker I know whose house was demolished as well because he's Muslim. So, and the fact, I think the messaging is very clear that I think, as I said, if you're Muslim, you're paying a visa fees. And visa fee is, and silence is also not enough. You have to do something else. And God knows what that something else is. What is the expectation? Uh, and it's
And why
very
should you
scary.
why should you pay a visa fee to a country
Exactly.
which equally belongs to you?
Exactly. That's
That
the point, right?
that is the
And and this is what I think there's this political scientist called Jan Werner Müller who calls it discriminatory legalism. Right? He says what that translates to is for my friends everything is allowed, for everyone else the law. And this is this is there's also a kind of phrasing where this other anthropologist Thomas Hansen who says that when the law of force becomes the force of law. Right? So when you use laws in a when you use institutional mechanisms, when there is, you are saying, oh, I'm working within the legal framework, I'm within the institutional framework to inflict harassment on Muslims. So you are using the using the power of institutions to disenfranchise an entire community just because of their identity, nothing else. And that to me is completely unacceptable. And I think, and and this is where I think going back to another thing, which is we need to combine Gandhi and Ambedkar here, because Ambedkar gave us a fantastic framework to say a constitutional framework, a legal framework to ask to ensure fraternity. And Gandhi gave us a moral uh, language to ask for fraternity. So my my urge for maybe everyone is how do we make fraternity cool? And this is primarily for the youth. That why is fraternity not cool? It's a very cool thing to practice fraternity. And how do we make fraternity actionable? We have many government policies to make equality actionable through policies and so on. Liberty, we have things. How do we make fraternity actionable? That is something I think going forward, that's my plea for everyone, not just, and it's not just incumbent on Muslims to do it. It's incumbent more on caste Hindus to find ways to make fraternity actionable. That's where I think the moral appeal is.
I couldn't agree with you more, Rajendran, as you know. I do realize that that what we need most is to cultivate our capacities for and our practice and our understanding of fraternity. If we have to overcome this really dark period in our country's history, I'm really grateful. I think this was a very beautiful, important conversation where we acknowledge that uh, charging this very erudite, eloquent, kind, compassionate teacher who speaks for peace, charging him with sedition, with violating women's rights, and most of all, creating hatred between religions. The absurdity is not enough. The cruelty, but of doing this. But most of all, the larger message, both for the university, for the student and the teacher, and for the larger society. What is the place of people of Muslim identity? And I think there we need to all come together. And let me end just by reading a little more from what the students wrote about Ali. He's one of the most articulate, passionate, and intelligent educators we have had. He has a deep and enduring compassion for all his students, persistent echoes of which remained throughout the class. How can we become better people? How do we treat each other and the world with kindness? He has immense respect and care for the people of this nation, and any critical question arises from that care. All he does as a professor is inspire us to hope and to care. And I think our tribute to Ali, our act of solidarity, I hope by the time this comes up on air, the Supreme Court would already have freed him on bail. But I feel justice will be incomplete until people who have misused their authority must also be held accountable for this action. And for that to happen, we probably have to wait for better times. Thank you. Thank you both for joining this conversation and our vigil of solidarity for our colleague who is facing police interrogation at the time that we speak. Thank you so much. Zindabad.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much.
ये दाग दाग उजाला ये शब कसीदा सहर वो इंतजार था जिसका ये वो सहर तो नहीं